We like to talk about patient centricity when times are good. When times are bad or we're looking at our quarterly results, we tend to remove the patient and look at our P&Ls. And I think the starting of this event with the CEO of Merck is a perfect example of where we need to go back to. Some of the things that Marc talked about, having patients on your steering committee as you develop the protocols for the clinical trial design. We took our top 120 leaders through a day in the life of a heart failure patient where they had to breathe through straws, heavy weights, and had to do normal activities. And then being hospitalized, literally hospitalized, and even though they didn't have heart failure, patients, our employees as patients crying. We need to get to that level of emotion because doing good is what we're here to do, and I think what most people in this industry came to do. And so getting back to not the quarterly sales numbers, but the longer term of what do patients need.
30 years ago, the provider spent time with you.
Yes.
The doctor I had was the doctor my mother had, was around until I left Maine, knew everything about me and my family, knew what was important to me. There was a very close alignment at that point in time. Very few people have that relationship with their doctor now. That alignment doesn't exist, and I go back to the reason we called for 20 meetings at the FDA. Surrogates have been speaking for the patient community for decades. Providers, researchers, academics. And they have a good understanding of us, but they get it wrong a lot. And of the 20 meetings that FDA has held so far, every single time they walked away saying what I thought was most important to the patient was wrong. Every single time. Let me give you an example. In Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, everybody assumes that what's most important to the families and children is living an extra 3 months. But when you look at the research, what's most important is that that kid can grab their sleeve with their teeth and throw their arm up onto the table and have the strength in their index finger and middle finger to walk up the iPad so that they can punch out some keys and communicate. They'd rather 3 months of that than 3 months of living without being able to move.
I think when you say that you're going to put the patient at the heart of everything you do, you've got to be willing to make some risky and some radical steps, actually, to really demonstrate that that is absolutely what you mean and that that is reflected in everything you do, even though commercially some of the decisions you make might look a little bit risky. And what I would propose is that if you really understand and are connected to both the patient and the customer, you will definitely build a strong position of trust with those communities. But in addition, you're able to, if you have the right listening mechanisms and you're willing to quickly understand what's going well and what's not going well, and correct where things aren't good and build where they are, that actually by that approach you can also deliver really strong financial performances which will keep your shareholders happy as well.
The focus on patients is fully embedded in our organization, and it helps us achieve 3 really critical things in the company. It keeps us focused, number 1. That's the first thing. As an organization, we're focused on patients. Number 2, and part of what you heard on the panel this morning, is that it does drive us every single day to think about innovation and how we're going to innovate products and advancements that are meaningful for patients. And there's a lot of threads that will go through that topic. And lastly, it guides what we do in terms of the culture of the organization. If you want to get on the CEO's bad side, tell me you don't care about patients, and I'll help you find another job with somebody else. So that's really what it's about, and it has to start from the top. You need to understand the socioeconomic environment of where these patients are, what they're living with, what they're grappling with. What are the needs that you have when you have a child with hemophilia, a boy? How are you going to manage that part of your life? And that requires that specific understanding and the stresses that people go through every day. And if you don't understand that, it's hard to say that you're going to be patient-centric. All you're doing is being disease-centric as opposed to patient-centric. So it means providing not only the treatment, but the resources that are available. And I saw some questions up there about, how much should we be investing in these things. You should be investing a lot. You should be investing a lot. And it's designed to improve not only the patient's lives, but also the outcomes of the therapies that you're providing, because the outcomes are also related to all the other aspects of the life that the patients are dealing with. So over the years, we've learned a great deal from patients, but one thing is quite clear, and that's patients consistently agree that there is a critical need for our industry to do better. And that's what I've heard directly from patients. Doesn't matter whether we're talking to the hemophilia community, the alpha-1 community, the HAE community, we hear this, and the expectations of patients is evolving, and we better make sure we're paying attention.
We, I think for a time, really focused on the healthcare provider. That was our customer, and that's who we always prioritized, and we looked at their, if lack of a better word, their journey and how we influence that decision. And now what we're finding is the healthcare provider has different incentives for the decisions they make. Patients also have more access to education, information, internet, et cetera, and they, depending on the disease state, you look at multiple sclerosis, they're making all their own decisions. Heart failure, still not as much, but each disease state is different, and because of the patient engagement, I think it's caused us to go back to where we started years ago and make sure that we're there for them in real time versus having only one avenue to go through, which is the healthcare provider.